my French back up. I studied French for 12 years. That's why I speak broken French. Yeah, I used to be very good, and now I'm shit because I've been living in the US for 20 years. But yeah, I really want to, bring it back up. So I wanted to do like a language partner online, just like à la, ou comme je dis, à la, ou dans le internet.
Okay, maybe I should say bonjour à la réunion du Next 10 pour le projet Node.js pour March 6, 2024. Anyway, okay. So welcome to the
Great French
Node.js
edition.
for March 6, 2024. Um, we were all talking about French and speaking French before, so that's where that conversation, for those who just joined the survey. Before we get going, any announcements that people would like to share?
Maybe one, there is a collaborator meeting in a month, exactly like even less than a month in London.
Putting that in the
And
minutes.
yeah, we'll add the link in a minute.
That's good to mention. I think the one thing we don't have on the agenda, but I'm going to add at the top, is like a deep dive recap and next steps.
Yep.
Yes.
And so you added the link. Did you add the, okay. If you can add the link in the minutes, that would be great.
Yep.
Otherwise, let's move on to the agenda items, and the one I just added, which was deep dive and recap. So kind of a very good deep dive. Thanks, both Jean and Amal, for hosting and leading all the discussion there. Guess it's sort of like what is it that just want to close on, like what's the things that we should do and make sure that we close out on to capture that and move on the next steps.
So I think up to when do we want to keep the survey like live? Do we want to close it like this week, end of this week?
I think so. I think we've like kind of dwindled on responses. I'm gonna just check to see I know we got a couple after the meeting. Yeah, we got like two responses after the meeting, and some people pinged me and were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get a chance." And so I can nudge them, but like we have 22 responses. I think that's probably plenty.
Yep.
And we can, if we want to close it now, we can. If we want to wait till Friday, we can. But I was thinking once we close it, it might be nice to send out a recap to the folks who we reached out to, just like with like here's the YouTube meeting, here's the results from everyone.
Yep.
Here's a link to like a GitHub issue where we're tracking action items. Like it might be nice to have like a little once we close it officially, and then we can publish and
Yep.
share out more publicly. So I
Yep.
don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, I was even thinking that we could like open a pull request with a result, with a survey result.
Yeah.
Like I think there is no like personal information or confidential information in it. So we can just add that like where we added like everything from the normal survey from the next 10. At least it give us a basis if we want to run it again in a year or
Yeah.
2 years or stuff like that. So I think this could be great. And use that as a default link. Hey, do you want to check the result? Here is a pull request, or the content is part of the next 10 repo. Go check it. If you have like some question, open an issue, and we can create a specific issue for discussion also. So I think it would be great to have that.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. So I think given that the responses are like in like there's a couple, so what format do we want to use for storing the responses, I guess? Like
You
Like,
got you had a format that put them into like three, like they're just like all the answers for a question together, right?
okay. Yeah,
I
we
think
could
that
we
was pretty consumable for me if everybody
yeah,
else thought.
Yeah.
yeah, you can just, and I think it was an XLS or like XLS by Google way. So I think it's fine, I guess.
so I can pull request an Excel sheet into the repo.
We could do that, but you'd already generated that. Like I think the summary one
Like the summary, you
more
think
Oh
summaries
yeah.
and
I
summary
think
out
the summary was more consumable. Like if you could convert
Just
that to Markdown.
if we want something machine readable, we can convert it into a format that's like less human readable and more like to consume if we want to I
We
don't
could do
know,
both,
either.
right? Like,
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like that format you had as summary, because like if we converted that to Markdown, you could just go to the page and read it, right? Nice and
Yeah.
easily. It's like, here's the question, here are all the answers. Here's the question, here are all the answers.
Totally. I just want to make sure. So the only downside to the summary is like there's people's answers were way like pretty nuanced, right? So
Sure.
I ultimately like do we want to have a summary and post the raw results somewhere as well for consumption or not? Like
Both. Like you could have the
oh,
summary file and then the Excel file, right? Which would
yeah,
be because the Excel file would end up still with a little more info because it shows the correlation between the answers for the questions, which could be
correct.
interesting.
Correct. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll post a summary as a markdown and then the Excel file. And hopefully, yeah, GitHub makes it easy to I've never like uploaded an Excel file. Like a CSV, yes, but like, I guess we could do CSV, but so yeah, we'll figure it out. So
Yeah, there's definitely some format, like a CSV, it might actually render for you. I don't know about an Excel.
that's what I'm thinking. I think maybe
Yeah.
just CSV. Um, but okay. Yeah, I'm happy to take point on that, no problem. And yeah, I think what else? Yeah, so just in terms of like the action items that came out from it, like there's, I've kind of been thinking in my head like, okay, well, what would be the best way forward to kind of get us all into one thing? And maybe we can, Jean, your idea of starting a discussion thing, like a discussion thread, like maybe we can post there what we each
Yep.
see as like here are the takeaways and then kind of have consensus there and then create issues for the things that we want to tackle. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'd just put in like a, PRN somewhere or create issue or a discussion thread, with the next steps.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know, Emma, are you volunteering to do that too?
Wait, for which one? The next steps? I mean, I'm happy to. I think what would be more productive, to be honest, is if we could maybe align on some of those in this call.
Sure.
Like
Yeah, let's
what
do that right now.
um yeah, just the team.
I can throw off the ones like that I remember, and maybe like that won't be all of them, but like I think the and I'm not sure what we called it, but like an advocate program,
Yeah, I like an ambassadors program of sorts.
ambassador program, like an ambassador program, I think was like one of them that was key ones. I think one of the other ones was
Yep. I can share
messaging.
my screen. I do have the note from
Oh,
the deep
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody had their breakfast today. Or should I say their petit déjeuner?
dive. No, yeah, I do have the takeaway
Yeah.
action
Okay.
item. I will completely forgot, but I will PR that also, like in the next 10 repo. But we had that idea of some kind of ambassador program, and we need to look at like the Finos and CNCF for that. So I guess it would be great also just for this link to maybe try to circle back with Robin or Kelly on that from the foundation.
Mhm.
I think we want to like put together what our ask would be, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like, because if we just say, hey, we want to have an ambassador program, it's like that. I think we need a little bit more definition of what that ambassador program would mean. And
Yep.
like, because at least in my mind, it has an ask on the foundation. Like my ask is like, if we tell you we trust this person, we're asking you to retweet their articles. And that, like, they may like, well, no, we don't want to do that. But like, so I think we need like, here's the asks, and then that would be the time, not necessarily fully written out program, but like, what do we think the impact is, or what do we want the foundation to do to help us, would be good to have before we go to them.
Yeah, but to be honest, you guys like having an actual ambassador program does need a little bit of like there's some logistics and like there have to be some boundaries and a little bit of governance, right? Like ultimately, like we need to understand like who's going to be managing that program, even in terms of like sharing updates to with ambassadors, right? Like if there's like ultimately like is there a committee or is there a group that's going to be
That's where it gets really sticky, right? Like, from my perspective, which is like we got to make it so it takes the least amount of effort from anybody as possible, right? Like, but you're right that somebody's got to say like we approve this person as an ambassador, right? So what's the process for that approval, right? And like who do we think are the right people to do that approval? Does the project agree that those people like, do we you throw off the top of head like, hey, we need endorsement from the TSC for somebody to be approved in the ambassador program. Is that the right group of people? Is that group of people willing to do it? But maybe, so that's where if we can come up with that, or is it, there's lots of options. Do we ask the foundation to do that or whatever? But like, we got to come up with our first thought and then we can, figure out if it's possible. Like starting a whole new committee that's going to like spend 3 hours a week or something, like just my start is like,
no,
that's
I don't think
No.
that's too heavyweight, but it's more like ultimately
Yeah.
what's the nominations process? Is
Yeah.
there going to be, is there?
I'm part of a few ambassadors program, and I would say that like from the not from the user side, but from the organizing side, there is like just one monthly call, one monthly meeting when you have like you set the objectives, say, okay, these are the new stuff that we want to talk about. This is the program for the month, and then like people who join. This can also be done like in a asynchronous way. For example, you leave like an afternoon instead of having just one meeting, you can have multiple meetings with ambassadors, so that you can like it doesn't need to be centralized. Okay, like one of the committee can have many one-to-ones with several ambassadors instead of having just one meeting with everybody, because it makes it easier to communicate, and it can be organized more asynchronously. Um, and I think it's also good to set up what are the rewards for the ambassadors. Uh, and this is with the foundation, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the key thing, you just talked about like having multiple meetings and stuff. Regardless of like how lightweight we can make it, somebody's got to end up being the champion.
Yep.
And the driver who would like, if nothing else, set up the monthly meeting and show up to host it, right? Like,
Yeah, I imagine it like in this way. For example, I'm free on Tuesday. I have a couple of hours. Then I set an event where everybody can join for these two couple of hours asynchronously, and then I can have many I imagine it this way, many one-to-one with the ambassadors and tell them, look, this is what. Even if it's repetitive, but it's low effort because I'm already free in those 2 hours, and then I can handle multiple. While if we want to organize something for everybody, it's very hard because of time zone. It's very hard because like if someone doesn't join, then it will go to the next month. This way we keep everything like probably more easily under control. It takes less effort, but it requires some people who volunteer when they have free time.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's like a few different things to explore, like in terms of like how this could work. And Marco, like, yeah, what you suggested is definitely an option. I think I feel like this deserves like its own like dedicated conversation.
it's just one of our key
Workshop.
things.
Yeah, because but yeah, because I do think like coming up with a proposed like how like a proposal for this program, right? Both in terms of rewards and like logistics and like the stuff that you were talking about, Marco, like that would be a nice thing to kind of put forward and get feedback on from other people in the node space. I think it's just like the more I think about it, like the more I think we need like kind of community managers on the node project. Like we need like a few different people from different time zones that are like helping do community management work.
The thing that I would do is to write down the right questions to ask, for example, like to ask to the TSC or foundation, whatever, is like, who's going to approve the like if we make this program, who's going to approve if someone is a possible ambassador or not? What are the rewards for the ambassador, and who decides the content that the ambassador should like publicize or whatever, and like stuff like code of conduct and all this more bureaucracy.
Yeah. And should there be like a corporate sponsor or corporate sponsors for the program too? Like that could help with the rewards piece, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
like, yeah.
I
whether
guess you would also have the quick.
discounts or,
Oh, sorry, go
whatever.
ahead.
Oh, no, no,
No, go
that's it.
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, whether it's discounts or stuff like that, discounts,
Yep.
cloud credits, whatever it is, like, travel funds. Like, I don't know. I'm just wondering, like,
Yeah.
should we look for
Yeah.
sponsors?
I'm like, I think getting like some tangible like rewards is good, but like the first thing I would just like, the thing that I think would help is promotion, right? Like
Yeah.
the getting agreement that says, and again, it's like, again, to that discussion, can we review everything or not? But like, if we could come up with a framework that says, here are our parameters. If you meet these parameters and you've been nominated as an ambassador, and of course, like Marco said, like who is going to say yes or no, like that's important. But like once you are, we will promote you in these ways. Like that's a reward and a benefit to the project, I think, as well, right? Like it shows more activity that's going on. The advocate in the end, like their role is to get the message out, right? And like, so us
Sure.
helping get the message out, I think that's the biggest reward of all versus like, yeah, okay, you get a t-shirt or a sweatshirt or something. Like doing that, I think
Yeah.
is a bonus, but I would really, really focus to start with on the promotion that we give them through the tools that the project has, the foundation has, right?
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's
But it
Totally
also
agree.
raises the question about like we had this discussion like about using, for example, the Node.js Twitter account or the OpenJS one to post what was it, every month or so, like the big news in the
Yeah.
ecosystem. And we ended with like almost statu quo on it would be too much. So are we discussing now to have the same Twitter account tweeting maybe 10 times a month, or let's say one times a week from one ambassador to relay and the message or stuff like that? Like it seems strange for me to say, hey, we cannot do it ourselves, but we are keen to do it for other people.
I would say we should lay out the program we think we want to have happen.
Okay.
We should make the ask. If the answer is we can't support that, then we can figure out, like, hopefully the answer is just yes, right? And then it's like, okay, the
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah.
If the answer is sorry, we can't do that, and we really feel this should happen, then like the project, in the end, the Twitter account is the project's. So we can consider the options and stuff. But I hope the answer would be like, in my mind, like again, it would be not necessarily even like looking for the models where nobody has to do anything as an overhead. So for in that model, it might be, well, we actually trust these ambassadors to do a retweet from the account. And like, here are the parameters, right? Like, and if they do the wrong thing, then the status can be revoked. But like that, I just come from the model in the Node project where like we basically say, we're going to trust people.
Yep.
If things go off the rails, we will recover. But like that sort of provides the maximum enablement and minimum overhead, right? And so like in that case, it's just like we want these people to have access to be able to tweet, and they're going to stay within these things. And like that doesn't require any effort from people, right? Like it does require giving up some control, taking on some risk. But like, maybe that is the right thing that we should do, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, we already have we already give people access to YouTube, to like to our social media, like YouTube, for example. It's even if it's not a collaborator, if I'm not mistaken. So
right,
like if we
like people
trust
chairing
someone, we
meetings.
just trust.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Like they could go and record some random thing, but like, and it I'll knock on wood, but like it works and it's effective because
Yeah.
we have lots of people chair and it doesn't have the bottleneck other than setting up the initial thing, right? So that's where I think like the open source multiplication of effort really works, right? And that's why I'm kind of like, if we can devise a program that relies on that.
Yep.
And you know, I could easily see it going wrong, but like we got to try things. And
I mean, it depends on the level of trust that when we accept someone, there needs to be a level of trust.
right,
So probably this makes the bar a bit higher. So we need to
right.
trust them a lot. Okay, so
That's
which
why like it's I think like the summary of the program that basically says like, here's the rules and here's what they get with that, right, is important because like, yeah, we may be asking for a level of trust that like people will have to think hard about, right? And then it's like, and then because then it becomes very important. Like if we're going to let them retweet from the Twitter account, what's the process for the people getting approved to do that?
Yep.
That's important. And who gets to make the decision, right? So then you've got to have that sort of check. So
yeah,
Yeah.
and also for the approval, I guess we can always use the same mechanism that we use for collaborators and like public issue, and people vote if they have something to say. They just like
Oh, yeah.
say no, and
yeah, like
that's
it
it.
would be a nomin, and I think like we usually like open a discussion item in advance so that like in the end it's a public issue. People could like raise issues there, but we also try and like minimize public, hey, no, this person's not going to do the right thing. We have the discussion internally to say, any risk here? It's like, no, everybody's in support. Okay, let's do public, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. Like, you're basically like you're suggesting that we create like an open ambassadors program. That's kind of like what this is. It's like
anybody can self-nominate effectively, but
yeah, but I meant like it's really like low governance,
yeah,
open. I don't know. It's like a very low touch kind of,
So
which I
do
think.
we do we also want, because this one is really like for external people that are like, not, I don't want to say external, but like people that are already like providing content in any kind of way, shape, or form to the ecosystem. But they will also, on their side, mostly do article, I guess, around Node.js that speak to the audience. Like people will say, "Oh, we release like a new version of the test runner." Someone will write an article on that because it will be used. It's a great news. But if we improve stream or low level the net module on a low level, like most of those people won't do an article because it won't reach. They won't have any reach. Like people, like 99.9% of the people using Node.js don't really care about the module ending HTTP 1, 2, 3 quick or anything else. So do we also want to have a dedicated team, set of people, working group, whatever the name, like that would work closely or a lot more with the different working group to also provide specific content from like direct, almost internal, let's say?
I like the challenge is who's going to volunteer to do that, right? And I think those are the kind of things that like if we have a program, then we can choose as the project to say,
Yep.
here are things we would like more content on. And even a little bit like collaborators, basically the nomination process could be like nominate somebody and list out all the content that they've published. To show like, you don't show up and say, well, I've done nothing, but I want to be a collaborator,
Yes.
right? It's more like you've done some things. And so like, it could be like, hey, I published all these things. And in terms of that, we could then like, if people are looking like, well, how do I get involved? You could say, well, here's places we want content. So go write some content, publish it. And then that's part of your nomination process, right? And
I imagine a lot of spam initially.
in terms of people nominating themselves, or yeah.
Yeah, so
Maybe we want to create the program and first it will be invite only to not
Yeah,
have everyone like 2,000 people saying, "Hey, I wrote one article in the last 10 years,"
Yep.
and just for us to reach out to specific people that we know in the ecosystem. Hey, we just created this new ambassador program for Node.js. Would it interest you? We know that you are doing a lot of article, a lot of like content. It's something that we would like to discuss or not. And then in a couple months, we open that to more people.
I think I'd even be okay. Yeah, like agreed. I could even see that like you need a nomination from a node. It gets a little bit tougher because like we have all the different working groups and everything like that. But like I could see even in the fullness of time, we might want like you need to be nominated by somebody in our project.
Yeah.
Or an
that
existing
makes
ambassador,
sense.
maybe, or an existing ambassador, right? Like,
Well, yes, that would be somebody in our like if you're in a project, I consider you're now part of the project, right? Like
yeah, that's true. I love that idea, Jean. I think small and some incubation period for this program is probably
yeah.
best, you know, and just like seeing how it goes and then kind of refining on it. And hopefully leveraging the existing ambassadors to help improve the program itself, right? Like that's the hopefully like it can be self-serving, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So I don't know. I think like the question is like, so how do we want to workshop that proposal a little bit? Like, does someone want to take a stab at kind of putting together something? I don't
I always think like we might want to say dedicate the next meeting to that or something, but somebody putting something on paper is a good starting part for discussion, right? Like rather than discussing everything in abstract, it's like
Yep.
here's something that people can look at and say, oh, tweak this, tweak that. That's usually much more effective.
I was going to ask, are you all in London in a month?
I'm not going to make it, but
Okay.
I don't know if the rest of you are going to be there.
So I will be there. Marco, I think you are
Yeah.
there too. Yeah. Amal.
Yes.
I'm I'm like it's a maybe for me. Like I would say
Okay.
like maybe like 30% chance maybe. Like I'm tempted, you know. I'm not that far from London and I could go for a couple days,
I
but
can bring some wine and croissant.
oh, really? Yeah, that's very tempting.
So we
Friendship,
move to
wine,
35%.
just only a little bit of mold. Don't worry. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. But I think regardless, like maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you, Marco, and others could like workshop at the collab summit. Like that could be a fun thing that you guys, you know,
Yeah.
workshop
Yeah,
with us
I was
there. Like,
going, it could be great. Like if we're able to, I don't know how many people will attend, but I guess 20 to 30 people. Plus, we do have a complete, I think a complete live stream or a better way to live stream and have people like being remote. So I think it could be great to have an open discussion, even if it's like 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, something close to that, with everyone on like brainstorming about that. And we could, on our side, on the next end, spend like maybe half the next session to try to review about specific questions, specific point, to just to come to the collaborator summit not empty-handed, but with some content, some stuff we want to bring, how it will work, and basically what you said before about the process, like almost a first pull request version, and to have the other collaborator just throwing other ID and checking if it makes sense or not.
Yeah,
yeah,
like a written down 0.1, I think would
Yeah.
be good to come to that discussion. Like, and like I would my pitch for when we think about like if we are thinking whoever's thinking about it is like let's start with the simplest thing that would add value, right? So that like so things like rewards or whatever, great, but like let's say like V 0.1, if we launch this, would this be good? What's the simplest thing we can come up with on that front? But
yeah, I think that's great. I think Jean, like that's a brilliant idea to take this to the collab summit. Like that's the place where you're gonna get as
Yeah.
much like real-time feedback from different parts of like people that are involved in different parts of the ecosystem that can, I think, help you. And like I think it's a good place to jam on it. So like if you're willing to lead up that discussion there, like yay.
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah. Oh,
so
good.
I think the like, but it sounds like just for the minutes, it's like use next meeting to doc 0.1,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And then Marco to the discussion at Collaborator Summit.
Yeah, so I will open an issue on the OpenJS repository for that, for the
Yeah.
like to suggest it.
Yep.
Like just because I'm thinking about it, do we want to have another session about another topic or just this one?
Yeah, maybe I don't know. I think can we go through the action items? That's a good question.
Like from what you shared, so basically we were just trying to put together the three sort of like main, or the, I don't know if it's three, but like I kind of have three stuck in mind. But like we had the ambassador program, we had messaging around governance of the project,
Oh,
and then the third one was I
uh,
can't.
the third one was mostly about, so sorry, I'm sharing again. Up.
Yeah.
Uh, this one. So like another point and pretty much everything we had. The first one was really about ambassador program and everything, like
Yeah.
what we saw from the first question. The second one was mostly directed on how can we provide more insight for company. Like we discussed quickly about engineer maybe liking Node.js and the JavaScript ecosystem, but still CTO and C-level are taking decision based on not necessarily always on the true capability of a language and a lot more on what they are seeing. So we need to show that Node.js is able to answer to enterprise need and provide the good capabilities. And Wes talk about how at Netflix is Node.js like answer to a business need, basically.
Okay, I think the concrete thing I think we might have talked about is doing like basically corporate
Yeah,
Node.js usage stories, right?
yeah, it was a
Case studies and stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
looking at like and I think it was like it fell into like the advocacy promotion streamline because it was kind of just highlighting how different companies are using Node within their stack, so I
yes.
think that was one.
But
And I
that
think
was like if we were gonna like, because we can only push so many things forward. That sounds like I think one of the ones we were saying like we should take that on as an issue. Like, how do we get more corporate usage story studies? I know the foundation like has had that in its list, so we should first go to them and say like, what are your plans? And like, is there one every quarter? Is there one every month? What's the, understand that and then figure out what we think would be needed, right? Versus what's happening or not.
yeah, I think for a scale of Node, I think one every month would be like preferred, right? It just keeps like some like momentum going. The question is like, is there anything that we can do as people that are helping the project to kind of identify those people, right? Like I like reach out to different enterprises and
Right.
how do we solicit that like so that we can get people in the queue and kind of get them committed to saying, okay, well, I'll take March, I'll take April, I'll take June.
Right. And
And
figure out what the problem is. Is it a problem of identifying the volunteers, which we could help with? Is it a problem of writing the blog posts, which we could, again, also have people volunteer? Like I think the current model is we find a company, they talk to some foundation staff who write the blog posts, right? But that requires cycles on the blog post. Maybe instead we can find somebody who will just write a blog post, at a company, right? Like say, hey, so anyway, yeah.
Like, I guess also with the number of people contributing to the project, and most of us are working on different company at different position and everything. Like, I don't want to put that we should interview ourselves, but it's also a way on specific use case on how, like, I'm thinking like Marco, you are here, so I'm thinking about Nearform, for example, I guess, and from memory built the full COVID tracker or something based on Node.js, and it was used
Yeah.
by multiple government and stuff like that. So how was it possible to do it where in France it took twice the time with half the capabilities? So I guess there is a lot of different project, like different way to bring this kind of discussion, like
Right. Like it's almost like how do we get people to interview themselves because that doesn't take as much effort. It's more like, hey,
yeah,
Jean, you use Node.js at Sandolfi, right? I think. And then it's
yeah,
like, just write an article that says Node.js at blah, and as a foundation, we will promote that
Yep.
as this month's, Node.js enterprise usage story. And they could come
Yep.
to me and say, like, okay, talk about anything you want about Red Hat, promote yourself, whatever, right? But like, here's
Yeah, exactly.
the company, right? And
Yeah.
and,
Sounds cool.
and just, yeah, exactly. Like anyway, we sort of dive into each of one of these individually, but that I think is like one of our top X things, right, on our list to say is like the corporate Node.js usage stories. What can we figure out to make that possible to say, like, get to that one a month, right? And
Yep.
it may need a different model. Like, we can't necessarily just ask the foundation to write one of those a month.
No.
Maybe if we asked, they'd say yes, but like, I know resources are tight, so we can think of other ways to make it happen, right?
Sure.
Or it's probable that if we advertise it, there will be a queue of
Right.
articles,
Yeah.
and then we don't have to worry about it because we always.
Right. And I can see companies who are involved, like as long as you just can talk about what you're doing and really kind of pitch what you're doing a little bit, and you're going to get some promotion, I think people will do that, right? And I don't
Yeah.
see that as a conflict with an open source project, right? Like if we set up the program so that you can basically say, I'm doing this, I can, and we're going to help promote, like, it seems like a
But
win-win.
it requires some review.
Sure, we'll need some, yeah, exactly. You're
Yep.
right. Like it needs to go through that review step and like,
And that's where I think maybe putting together a pool of reviewers would be helpful, right? Like this is where maybe like, yeah, we have like 12 people that we tap to, to say, okay, yeah, here can you give this, can somebody give this, like, can we get a couple people to thumbs up this, right? Like, does the content make sense? Is there anything that's like problematic, etc.
yeah, and like again, maybe we can do that open source wise, right? Like
Yeah,
basically
absolutely.
it
Yeah.
may be invite only or what, I don't know, however the thing is, but like, basically here's the queue. When it's somebody's in the queue comes up, it's like, okay, you PR in the article, and there can be comments and suggestions and whatever. And then when it gets out of that, it's lands and then it gets published as a result of
Yeah, I love
guess
that like using a repo.
there is a similar process for the Node.js website where they have proofreader for the translation. We can do the same thing, but for
Yeah.
No, and this one makes sense. Like we can have an open repo and not even to have invite and stuff like that, because basically it will only be merged when we all agree, or like the team that handle that agree that it needs to be published.
Yeah.
So even if you open that, we just need basically to clean like bullshit pull request on people that would sell their own product or stuff like that. But it's like almost what we can be used already on some projects.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
we can set up some
like,
criteria, like
yeah, it's
yeah.
Yeah.
So this one will be like almost easy, I would guess, to set up and to work with.
Yeah, and like just it's setting like the parameters that says, okay, like this is what we want. You can PR in your article. We publish one a month. And then yeah, there's that. It's getting enough people to review them to say like this met the requirements. Yeah, it did. Okay, then it gets published, right? And
yeah. I think that's like the most sustainable path forward. It's just an awesome suggestion. Like, yeah, using a repo, setting the criteria there, advertising that this exists, reaching out, like using our network to kind of spread the word further, and then hopefully, just like getting people to create issues for, things that they're excited. Like, I guess the question is like, how do you get in the queue? Right? You're like, oh, I'm Netflix, I want to write about something. Do we just suggest that they like open an issue and then submit a PR to close the issue? Like I'm
yeah, something like that would make sense to me. The only question that we should keep in mind is for us developers in GitHub is great. Just we just want to make sure that the people who we want to write these can do that, right? And I'm a little biased in that I don't see why not, but I do know that some people are like, we're not developers, we don't know GitHub, but like as a project, I don't know, I'm sometimes like, that's a bit of a filter that's not bad. Like, If you
Yeah,
don't know
but
GitHub and you can't submit a PR, or should you be writing about Node? But I
but
don't know.
I
That would probably be very controversial, right? Like,
No, no, I think that this is the way that we have done things, like openly. There is no like without using GitHub, it would not be open. So I would not agree on anything
yeah.
than having a repo.
yeah, I
Yeah.
certainly like the submit. Like, we might want to think about like avoiding people putting a bunch of work that says no. Like, it would be like, hey, put your abstract in. It's a
Right up.
paragraph. Then somebody says, there's some sort of review that says, yeah, if you talk about that, yes. And then, okay, and then there's then they go and write the full thing, and then there could be a review cycle on that. But
Yeah, open an issue with your proposal, closed or rejected. If
yeah,
it's approved, you open the pull request,
Yeah.
and then we approve it and ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like I agree with you, Michael. Like I have the same issue on a daily basis at the company. Like I'm writing everything, documentation and stuff like that on GitHub. But I think we here it's not really an issue. We want like article that are going a bit in depth, not just oh we are using Node.js, we click on deploy and it's working. We so I guess we'll mostly have article from technical or technical-ish people, which should be enough for them to be able to use GitHub. Like I guess it won't be, we won't have article from public relation people or people on the business side that don't know Node.js other than the name or stuff like that. So I guess it's at least for the first round-ish of stuff, if we want to extend that to other function in a company, maybe, but I guess we still want to show how Node.js shine in a technical ecosystem. So it makes sense that
right,
it's written by technical people. Maybe on their side there will be having go back and forth between them and their PR team or stuff like
right,
that. Or
yes.
but it will be internal to the company, not between them and us. So
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good way to frame it. Is like, we don't want a company's marketing team
yeah,
writing a marketing story.
yeah,
But on the flip side, it's okay for the technical people who are working with Node within their project to highlight that, like, hey, and in the end we ship this product which we hope you use, right? But like,
yeah,
it's the technical story of why Node is used within the company and why it's, yeah, no, and I think, and therefore seems like a good rationale for like those people should be okay with using GitHub as the,
yeah,
yeah, okay,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that like for me, there's two opportunities that I see here to kind of further like highlight and promote this. One is perhaps adding this Node.js case studies section to the website, specifically as a separate item from a blog post, right?
yep,
It's not just blog post, but like how do we have a case studies? And so that's kind of the other benefit for this company is like, these companies like they get featured on the Node.js website essentially as like here's like this month's case study, right? But also same thing for the ambassadors program, right? Like I think that would be a nice tab to have on the website. Like, here's our
here are
ambassador
the ambassadors, absolutely, yes,
picture, bio, links,
yeah,
ultimately it's good for hiring, good for conference
yep.
speaking opportunities, whatever it is, like it's a good kind of hub for those things. So yeah, I would just love to tie this back to the website somehow.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that, like, website or whatever ways we can help. Like, I think in the end, it's like we want to help the people who are going to do this work for the project
Yeah.
by choice.
Yeah.
So whatever mechanisms we have that we think help them.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
yep.
Could you go back to sharing your screen?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But we have three really good ones now.
Yeah, so there was
Actually, yeah.
going to take where was the takeaway? So
Yeah.
the
This part.
guidelines. So what was the guidelines thing specifically?
Well, I think, like, for me, like, that's just back to the ambassador program, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like, what we want to do is set parameters through some guidelines and then trust people. Like, once they get approved as a ambassador, we don't review their stuff necessarily. We trust them to be following those guidelines, and they, basically, like collaborators, they self-regulate, right?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so looking at the bottom list, so the
Yeah,
governance messaging. So there was a lot of kind of there was some FUD around like, people don't know how Node.js works. People don't know a lot of things about Node, right? Like
yeah,
um not just the technical pieces, but the actual like non-technical workings. And so how do we like do we want to have a kind of like a campaign around that? Like
yeah.
just kind of being more
Oh yeah,
explicit and
but
potentially actually like this might also be a good thing to tie back to the website, like there might be an opportunity for us to kind of highlight that more centrally on the website, like whatever we create, any artifacts, like how this project works, what is this like,
Yeah,
just a bit more featured on the website, and in docs potentially.
definitely. So I think that's like a bullet point I put in is like messaging around governance of the project.
Yeah.
Just like as initiative, we should figure out like what do we want to communicate? Where should it go? I mean, right, like back to the website, like maybe when you land there, it should be like an immediate thing you can easily find and see, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like a did you know? Like,
like
Right,
yeah,
like even in like that's like maybe a campaign, like it's how do we get these things like, did you know there are a bunch of ambassadors, right? Hey, we promote something. Did you know there's this,
like
governance of Node is blah. Like maybe we want to ask for like a weekly did you know
like
promote,
here
right?
you have spaces. Like you could even have like 3, 4 cards with the last 4 articles or something like that.
Right.
yes, I'm about to just send you all the link to the latest website. Just give me a second.
Oh,
I'm
this is
like
the latest. This one?
no, the one
Gonna
that
be a
like
redesign, yeah.
Okay.
fun fact, I'm working on a blog post with the help of that. Like with Claudio, they're doing so like they're doing so much. I'm like trying to see how I can help. So I'm gonna put a link in the chat. So that's the actual um new website that's being redesigned. And so yeah, we maybe a cool thing to kind of highlight that like those like little tidbits and then have a link out to a place where we go into the details of like of those, like a one pager that kind of explains like how the project works and
Yeah.
all that
So
stuff.
I think the link is public, right? It's not private. I can show it live.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Like we already have a project governance page, but it's pretty light.
So technically here, we already have the blog one, which is announcement release vulnerabilities. Like we can have a specific category for that.
Like case studies.
For example, yeah.
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 We are
Yeah.
down to 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So like I think we have
Yeah.
our top level, like the somewhere we want to like capture like from the output, the top
Yep.
level things were ambassador program, messaging about the governance of the project, corporate Node.js usage storage studies. Is there anything else that should be in that list in the top things that will then have their own individual discussions?
Well, I mean, I think this one's tough, but like I would
So
love
just one, how much time do we want to allocate to this session on the at
collapse.
the yeah, the summit?
I guess 1 hour. Like if,
Okay.
I don't
I
know
don't
if
think
it's
it's enough to
like
cover all these topics,
one and
especially
a
if we have a lot of people.
yeah, 1 hour and a half would be great. But I don't know if like I didn't check the schedule. Like last time for some next 10 we wanted 2 hours, it was moved to 1 hour and a half because like a lot of people submitted talks, but it was one day. This time it's 2 days, so maybe there is more room for more session that will be a bit longer.
So let's submit this as a session.
Yep.
So that we have our time slot like scheduled, and like these are the points that we would want to talk about. And if people want to join us, good. If not,
Yeah, I just want to say that I don't know if you all want to cover everything in those 2 hours or one and a half hour. I would recommend maybe just prioritizing the ambassador
Yeah.
program. I think the rest of it is much simpler.
Yep.
Like,
okay.
Yeah, one topic would be more than enough for the whole hour. Like I think
Yep.
if you brought the straw man that maybe we work on in the next meeting,
Yeah.
and that's the subject of the whole discussion, I think that would fill up the time for sure.
Yeah.
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 So Mel, you were about to say something again. We're down to 2 minutes. Another topic
no,
here?
yeah, the other, I mean, this is so broad, but it's more just kind of like, how do we want to tackle and combat the like corporate marketing engines that are like with these other runtimes where they are kind of sort of bashing Node. You know, like for me, like I don't think these things have to exist in binary. Like more
Right.
than one thing can happen at once. But for me, what I'm not happy about is the bashing of Node.
Right.
You don't, in order to talk about how good your thing is, you don't have to bash this other thing, right? And
Yep.
it's so and I'm just thinking about like JSR and the announcement that came out, and Socket's kind of like what the one line that Socket decided to highlight in their tweet, and which, you know, like it's funny, like if you look at the whole blog post, like it was much more, it wasn't as insidious towards Node, you know, like it's, you know, it set out, let's build on the success of NPM and all, you know, but ultimately, like I don't like, I don't know, I for me, like I just want to nip that bashing in the butt because it's not healthy for the ecosystem. And then we have TSC members that are also having conversations online about unbundling NPM, and it's very unproductive, and I just it like ultimately, like I think Darcy said it best. He's like, I'm so sick of this, you know, like this is ultimately, this is pushing, this would push other people towards other runtimes with conviction, because there's just so much kind of either in what appears to be infighting and just like unproductive discussions like around, you know, so it's just, I don't know. So I don't know if this is a problem that we're going to be able to solve, let alone solve it in one, or like have a discussion.
I think part of that, again, we'll have to drop in 1 minute, but the
Same.
part of it is we can cover that in the messaging around the governance, because like your story about like we're going to have these discussions, like that's part of our governance is to be open and transparent. So like hopefully we can position them in a better light.
Right.
Yep.
And I did also add as a separate bullet, which I think would cover different aspects, is like the challenge of corporate marketing bashing Node.js, making things more negative, controversial than they are in reality, right? Like
Correct.
I think that's worth us
Yeah.
discussing and saying, like, what is it we can do? Not necessarily like to counter those, but like, what do we do, right? Like, do we
Yep.
ignore it? What is our policy on these things? Even just having that written down, I think makes sense.
So I guess also,
Yep.
Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, guys,
I guess
I gotta drop.
Yeah,
So I
we
just
got to
want to
drop by
say bye, everyone.
just
so
on that
Bye.
note, I will validate the PR. So Amal, welcome in the next 10 officially. I
Yep.
will merge your PR.
Yeah, definitely.